Hi everyone, welcome to Wix Ideas. I'm Walter, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you how to add a search bar to your Wix Lightbox. Now to test this out, let's head over to the search icon and click on that. As you can see, it brings up a pop-up that allows us to search for keywords. I'm going to go ahead and search for the keyword choco, and when you hit on enter, it brings you to a different page or a search page where your keyword is being applied to a search bar, and that already filters your repeater. Now as you can see over here in the repeater, we have the search page, which is currently this page, and we have a query parameter with the key and also the value that we searched in our search bar. Now this page contains a repeater element that is connected to a database. As you can see, we have more items, and when you click on the X or clear filter, it clears the filter and also removes that parameter from our URL. And as you can see, we have all the items from our repeater from earlier. Now you can also go ahead and use this search bar to still search within the page, but most importantly, you can go ahead and search with the search icon on your header. Now this is going to appear on all pages of your website, so from every page that you have on your website, you can actually go in and type in any keyword, and it's going to bring you straight to this page with the keyword that you searched in your query parameter and also in your search bar with the item already filtered. Now if you're excited to join me in this tutorial, don't forget to smash that subscribe button, give this video a like, and most importantly, don't forget to turn on your bell notification to be the very first to know of my future videos like this. Now if you're excited to join me in this video, let's jump right in. Amazing. Now this is the editor I'm going to be using for this tutorial, and as you can see, we already have an icon here. I've already set up everything, which includes the elements that we're going to be using for this tutorial, except for the code, which I'm going to walk you through step by step on how to implement the code to make it your own. Now the most important thing, as you can see over here, is this icon, which is already a pinned element. But to add an icon to your header, you're going to head over to the add elements, go over to the decoratives, and over here in the icons, go ahead and click on more icons, and it's going to bring you to the media from Wix. And here you can always search for the keyword search or magnifying glass. As you can see, we have several options that you can use for your search icon. Now I've gone ahead to add mine, and I've gone ahead to also design it the way I want it to look like, so you can also do well to do this for your own to match your brand. Now you might have noticed that this element is currently pinned to our screen, but don't worry about this. Yours may not be pinned to the screen as long as you add it to the header section of your website. Another thing that you might have noticed as well is that we have linked this icon to a lightbox. As you can see, we've connected this to a lightbox element that we've created, and that brings us to the next part of this tutorial, which is setting up your lightbox. Now the very first thing to do to add a lightbox to your Wix website is to go to add elements and then head over to interactive. Now here you can see we have several options for lightboxes. Now go ahead and choose any option that you want and then click on it to add it to your screen. Now I've gone ahead to add mine, so you can head over to the pages and menu and go all the way down to lightboxes, and over here click on your search bar lightbox. Now over here you can go ahead and rename it to search bar. It doesn't matter what you name it, as long as you've created your lightbox and connected it to your search icon. That is all you need to do. Now the next thing you want to do is to add in a very special element, which is the text input element. Now this is the element that allows site visitors to enter in their keyword that needs to be searched. So to add a text input element, head over to add elements again and go all the way down to input. Now over here you can see we have text input. Now go ahead and add any of these text inputs to your lightbox and go ahead and design it the way you want it to look like. Now there are several design options, but most importantly, make sure you design it according to your brand so it goes in seamlessly with your website. Now you can also go ahead and check out the settings, and this is where you determine if you want to have a field title, a placeholder, and what the placeholder text says. Now if you scroll further down, you can see that we have some field types, and most importantly is this required field. Now you want to turn this off, make sure this is unchecked. Now the next thing you want to go ahead and do is to add your button element. Now to add a button element, go over to your add elements again, and over here in the buttons, drag and drop these text and icon buttons. Any of these text and icon buttons will do, but what you want to do again is to go ahead and design it according to your brand, and then head over to the settings. Now this is where you need to decide if it's going to be a text and icon, or just an icon, or just a text. Now if you have both, go ahead and change what the text or the label says, and also change what the icon shows. Now click on this to actually replace your icon with any icon of your choice, so you can go ahead and upload any icon that you want, or head over to the media from Wix and simply go ahead and search for the keyword search. Now once you do that, it's going to provide you with options that allows you to actually add these icons to your button element. Now most importantly, you can head over to the layout to actually position this properly so that it displays the search icon first or displays the text first. Now you can play around with all of these features. These are amazing features, but I'm not going to be going deep into this design. Now another thing I actually did here was to add a container box such that it just stays side by side with my text input, and it just makes it look like a whole single element. Now as you can see, these elements are being grouped to make it look like a single element. Now with all this done, there are other settings that we need to make sure are in place. For example, we need to set the trigger. Now we need to make sure that this lightbox does not open automatically when the site visitor visits the page. So make sure that automatically displays lightbox on pages is set to no. Now to set the overlay, which is this dark effect that you see here, go over to the change background and head over to the settings. Now this is where you choose the color of the overlay or the background, so you can change this color to whatever you want. I'm just going to leave mine at this dark color. Now this is looking all great. Now once the site visitor has entered in their keyword and clicked on this search button, it's going to take them to a very special page, which is the search page. So let's go ahead and exit this mode and then open up our pages and menu. Now we have this search page which I've created, and I've set up this page with a repeater which contains items from my database. Now as you can see right again, we have a search bar, we have this clear icon, and then we have a search button again. Now this is a repeater element which I've connected to a database. Now this database is called chocolates, and I've connected it with this data set right over here. Now let's go ahead and actually open up our database. Head over to CMS, go to your collection, and over here you can see we have a collection called chocolates. Now this collection has been populated with data, so you can go ahead and create a database, and you can create your own collection by clicking on create collection. Now once you do that, it's going to greet you with two options. The very first is to create with AI, and the next one is to start from scratch. I recommend starting from scratch if you want to have custom items in your collection. Now go ahead and give it a name. Now you can also change this name as you move on, but once you're done giving it a name, go ahead and click on create. Now once you click on create, it should bring you to something like this, but of course without any of the items. Now the only field you're going to have is probably the title field, but you can go ahead and add more fields such as the image field by clicking on add field and clicking on image and then choosing this field type. Now once you're done, give that field a name. So we can rename these and call it brand images. And then once you're done, click on save, and once you click on save, it's going to add that field to your collection. Now I've gone ahead to add all the text, the titles, and also the images for each of the items that were displayed. As you can see, we only have the image and we have the title. Now once you're done, come back to the page and add your repeater, which is a repeating layout that allows you to add or display content from your database with the same design but with different content. Now as you can see, this is exactly the same design for each and every one of these items but with different content. Now to add a repeater, head over to add elements, go over to list. As you can see, we have repeaters. Now drag and drop these repeaters into your page, and just like editing any element in your website, you can simply drag and drop any element that you want onto your repeater and connect it to your database. We're going to head over to this icon that says connect to CMS and click on that. Now this is where you need to create your data set, which is like a glue or link between your repeater and your database. Now once you have created your data set, head over to the image, and this is where you actually connect your image source to the image field that we've created in the database. And then we're going to also connect the alt text to the title. I'm going to connect the tooltip to the title as well. Then head back to the connections, and over here we're going to also select the text and simply connect the text to the title field. Now once we are done, this is all set and we're ready to actually start adding in our code. But the very first code we need to add is the one from our Lightbox. But here's what we need to do. We need to enable our developer tool to allow us to start adding in our code. So head over to dev mode, and over here turn on your dev mode. Now once that is turned on, head back to your pages and menu, and then head over to your lightboxes. Again, head over to your search bar and open up that lightbox that we've created. As you can see, this is the section for us to start adding in our code from our lightbox. But this is how it's going to work. Once the site visitor clicks on this icon over here and enter in their keyword. Now once they enter in their keyword and click on the search button, it's going to redirect them to the search page. And the search page is going to contain a query parameter on the URL. So as you can see, we have this query parameter with the keyword that we just entered. Now once they arrive at this page, we're going to be using the query parameter again to actually get what was searched and enter it into our search bar. Now the search bar is already programmed such that it automatically begins to search once there is any value in it. As you can see, we have a value which is the same as what we have in our query parameter. Now this is going to search for all the items that contain the keyword choco. So that is what we're going to do. So first of all, I have a document that is going to break this down into steps. Now the very first thing we need to do is to import our Wix location, which is the library that contains the query parameter. So let's go ahead and copy this library and head back to our Lightbox page. Make sure your Lightbox is opened, and let's go ahead and maximize this section. So right at the top, go ahead and delete this comment and just replace it with your Wix location front-end library. Now we've done that, and as you can see, we have our already function, which by default is always in our Wix code area, so no need to import that section. So just go ahead and import or copy all the items within our already function. So go ahead and copy this and bring it inside of already function in our code. Now as you can see, we have an error, which is the update query params function, which we don't have yet, but we are soon going to get it. But before that comes in, as you can see, we have a search button, which is actually the ID for this element. I've gone ahead to name these elements to what they're supposed to be. So as you can see, when you click on this text input, it says search bar, and you can go ahead to change your ID to say search bar right over here. Now if you don't find this properties panel here, go ahead and toggle this on and off to actually be able to see it. And again, make sure that you set your ID to say search bar. And also the same thing goes with the search button. So go ahead and click on your search button to highlight the search button and then allow you to actually change the ID from right over here. Now you can see that we have two things going on here. The very first one is when we click on the search button, which we have the on click function here, we call the update query params, and we also do the same for the search bar, such that when we click on the enter key on our keyboard, we also call this update query params function. Now what exactly is the update query params? Now let's go ahead and copy that function, and I'm going to explain it to you pretty soon. Now go ahead and highlight all of this and then copy that and bring it back to your page, and outside of your already function, just paste that right in. Now as you can see, we don't have any errors anymore, and we're about to actually move to the next section. But before that, let me just explain what this function actually does. Now this function contains some functionality that allows you to add query parameters to your URL, and then it also redirects the user to a different page while still retaining those query parameters in its URL. Now let's head over to the Wix documentation to have a broader view of this. Now the query parameters get an object used to manage the query segments of the current page's URL. So what exactly is this query? Now as you can see from this URL, we have the base URL, and then we also have a path, and as you can see, we have a section that starts with a question mark, and then we have something that looks like a key, which is equal to a value called African elephant. Now this is what a query is. So what we do is that we get a key which is unique for as many queries as we want, and then we are going to assign a value to that particular key. Now let's head back to the query params and head over to this section. Now as you can see, it's an object as we read, and it holds a key, and as you can see, a key can just be any value that you want it to be. For me, mine is going to be called search. If you have a drop down that filters, you can call it filter, and then the value is going to be the actual keyword that you want to filter by. So this value can be anything. It can be unique or not unique, it doesn't matter, but the key needs to be unique. And as you can see, we can add as many parameters as we want. So as you can see, we have two parameters here, but for mine we only have one parameter, and that's because we have only one search bar or search feature. But if you have more than that, you can go ahead over here and add as many as you want. So simply copy this section and just paste it on the next line. And as you can see, we have an error here that says that you cannot have multiple properties with the same name. So here we can change this to filter if you have maybe a drop down, and you also want to change the drop down value here. So here should go the drop down ID if you have an element or a drop down element here. So let's just undo all we've done here, and this is just one part of it, and the very next part of it is this section right over here. So this is where we actually map through these objects and get all the keys and values and attach them to the URL, and then join them using the AND letter. And the next thing we have here is a URL about where we're going to be redirecting to. So this is the URL to my search page. So if you've created your search page, go ahead and copy this particular URL just before the query. So copy that particular URL and just bring it right over here and paste. Now once you're done with that, add a question mark, and here we have a query string which contains all the queries that we have defined in this section. And finally, we use the Wix location to actually redirect to this URL. So let's just give this a try so you can actually see how this works. So I'm going to head back to the home page, and I'm going to click on this particular icon again, and I'm going to search for a keyword called suites. Then click on search, and as you can see, that redirects me to this page and also adds this URL to or this query to my URL, and it brings me to this page where it automatically adds this keyword from my URL and filters my repeater by any word or keyword item that has, and filters any item with the keyword suite. Alright, so we're done with the Lightbox, and the next part we're going to head to is actually the search page. Now you're going to create a page. Again, you're going to create a page. You're going to add the search bar, which has the same ID as what we have in the Lightbox. We're also going to add a search button, which also contains the same ID as the Lightbox. And in addition, we're just going to add an icon called clear. So you're going to head over to your properties panel and make sure that you change this to say clear for your clear filter icon. So this is what we use to clear the filter, and also use it to remove the query from our URL. So if you click on that, it removes the query from the URL. And then we have the repeater. Add your repeater and connect it to your database. Now we're going to maximize our code section and head over to the next part of our code. Now you can see I have defined this by what sections you need to add it to, and we're going to go step by step through this code. I assure you this is not complicated at all. I'm going to show you exactly how you can update this to make it yours. So in the search page, we're going to first of all copy to libraries, and I'm going to explain to you what these libraries actually do. Now the first library is the Wix location, which we recently used and learned about what it does. So among many things that it does, it gives us the ability to actually add a query parameter to our URL, but it also allows us to get the query from our URL. And another use case that we have utilized was to actually redirect us to this particular search page. Now I also have the Wix data, which helps us to filter or search items from our database. So once we arrive at this page with a query, then we're going to use the Wix data to actually filter or search for items that match that particular keyword. Now we've imported the most important libraries. The next thing we need to add is our onReady function, which starts here and actually ends here. But as you can see, we already have our onReady function, so there's no need to actually add that again. Now let's go ahead and copy the very next part of our code, which is the part that we use to actually get the query from our URL. So clear all of this and just paste in your constant. Now this constant is called search query, and this is how we use the Wix location to actually query or get the particular query using the key. Now this right here is the key. And how do I know that's the key? When you go ahead and search for a word, let's just search for the word choco and hit on enter. As you can see, we have this key right over here, and we have the value, which is something we learned from here. This is the key and this is the value. Now, so go ahead and copy this key and bring it right over here. Now, this is how we access the object or a particular query object from our URL. So if you have more than one queries, and an example we had before was adding a drop down to your Lightbox, then what you need to do is just to duplicate this section. So copy this, paste it in the next line. And here, instead of search, we're just going to call that filter, and then just going to go over here and change that particular key for that drop down. Then let's assume that you actually called the key for that drop down filter. Then you're going to go ahead and add a filter, and that should actually add somewhere here. So ideally it should look something like this. Filter equal to, let's just say candy. All right, so it should look something like this, and we have one key here, we have another key here, and you're just going to copy that key and place it here. But since we have only one particular query, then we're just going to leave it this way. Now let's head back to the next part of our code. I'm going to actually go through down to this section, which is the search function. I'm going to copy this search function before we get to this part. So let's get the search function, which is the most important function that we have in this tutorial. Now the search function uses the Wix data to actually search for items in our database. So over here we have a variable called filter, which we assigned Wix data.filter, and we have the searched item, which is the value of our search bar. Now our search bar is this element right over here, so you're going to get that ID and place it right here. Now if you are using the same ID as me, you do not even need to change anything. That the only thing you might want to change is probably the field key or the fields that you're searching for in your website. Now I have another tutorial on multiple search fields for your search bar in Wix. You can check that tutorial out. I have a link in the description below. You can check it out on how to add more fields that you'd like to search for if you have multiple fields in your database. And the next thing you also want to change is your data set. So this data set here is the data set that you use to connect with this particular repeater. If you use a different data set, it's not going to work. So make sure that you get the ID for your data set. Now how to get the data set ID? Click on this icon that is connected to your repeater and head over to the data set settings. Now over here, this is where you see your data set ID. So copy this ID and bring it back right into your code. Now we are actually checking if the searched item or this particular search bar has an item in it or a value in it. Then we're going to show the clear icon, which is right over here. This is what is showing up. So if I do clear this, you can see that that search icon is hidden. But when I have an item or value in it, then this icon is displayed. And then next, we're going to use the Wix data filter to filter our database and search for any filter that contains the keyword that is in our search bar in this particular field. Now, how do you get the field key from a database? Now head over to these databases and head over to the database you created and click on that. We have this value that or text that is inside the brackets. Just go ahead and click on this to copy the ID and then paste it right here. So that's how you get the field key. Another way to get the field key is when you open up your collection. Just click on the field and head over to edit, and over here this is also the field key, so you can click on copy to copy the field key from your database directly. Now let's go ahead and close this section, and then next we're going to now call the data set filter to actually filter our items. Else, if there is no value in our search bar, we're going to go ahead and hide our clear filter and also clear the parameters or the query parameter. Now that is what we need to do, and this clear parameter is a function that we've not defined yet. We're going to get to that part pretty soon. Now let's head back to the top where we left off, and we actually stopped somewhere around here. And I'm going to go ahead and actually copy all of this to this very section, and the reason why I'm doing this is because they all work hand in hand. So let's go ahead and actually paste this right here. All right, and let's go ahead and right click and format our code. Now we have a debounce timer, and this is what allows us to actually type in our items without having to click on the search icon. So as you can see, when I begin to type in my values, it begins to search. So if I begin to type in Speedy, it begins to search without allowing me to actually click on the search icon or to even hit enter on my keyboard. I think this is a pretty easy way to allow site users to search for items seamlessly. So let's go ahead and clear this. This is a variable. It allows us to use the on key press. So I'm just going to jump to this section where we have utilized the debounce timer. So as you can see, it begins to clear the timer. Now the main purpose of this timer is actually to allow us to automatically search for items or call the function every 200 milliseconds when the user is pressing in on their key. Now as you can see, I have a section that is hidden here, and the reason for this is because we can actually go ahead and comment all of this out. So you can hold on Control and then the / to comment that section out, and on Mac you can just hold on Command and then the / to comment that section out. And we can also do the same thing here, hold on Control, Command to and / to comment that back in or to remove the comment. All right, and what this does is just when you click on your enter key, then the search function is called. Now I think this is also an interesting way to do that, but anyone that you want, you can go ahead and choose that. I just added 2 options so you can actually use the options. And most importantly, as you can see, we are going to load the query parameter on search bar when they have arrived on the page. So in moment we begin to search for a word, let's just search for a word and call that choco and click on search. We're going to then populate our text inputs with the keyword from our query parameter. All right, so what we did here was that the value of our search bar is going to be equal to the search query, which is the search key that we have. So if you have multiple elements, if you have a drop down and you also have a drop down here, then you're just going to create another constant that contains the keyword for your drop down as you set it in the lightbox, and then assign that value to your drop down element. Most importantly, we're going to call the search function on load. So once they arrive this page, we want to search already. We want to search the database and display the item already. And that is exactly what you see when we search for an item. It searches and gives us the results once they have arrived at the page. Now we are almost done with this. We have a few more sections to go, and that is here we have the clear params function. Now we're going to copy this function and bring it right into our code. Now you can actually decide to add this function outside of your already function, and as you can see, what this function does is it helps us to reset our filter, and it also helps us to remove the query parameter from the URL. So as you can see, when I click on this X, it removes that query from the search bar. It resets our search and puts the repeater items back to where they used to be, and also removes the value from our search bar. So that is what this particular function does. So most importantly, you want to have your search bar ID here and also have your data sets ID here. Now that is all you need to do here. Now if you're going to remove more items, as you can see, we are setting the value of our search bar to undefined, or we can set it as an empty value. So if you have multiple items or you have multiple elements like a drop down, just add a comma, a hash, and then let's say the drop down ID, and you can add as many elements ID as you want to remove their value from. Now since we don't have any drop down, we have only a search bar, it's just going to have this single ID. Now most importantly, before we jump right to the very last part, now most importantly, as you can see over here, we also have the same object that we're trying to clear from, right? We have an object that contains the key and also the value. Again, the key is the search, and if you have multiple parameters that you want to clear, just go ahead and add the key and the value according to what this documentation says. So you can actually go through this documentation to see what it does and how to make use of it. Now the final part of this code is where we actually trigger the clear params using the clear filter icon. Now let's go ahead and copy that and paste that right inside of our already function. So I know that this is already function because this is where it ends and it starts right over here. All right, so when we click on the clear, which is this icon right over here, when we click on this one, then we want to call the clear params function, and we also want to hide the clear icon. Now we're done with this code and we're about to actually test this out. So let's go ahead and publish and save to see how this works. All right, so I've just refreshed the page. It's exactly the same page. I just had to publish it with the new update that we've done. And so the very first thing I did was to click on this icon, and I'm going to search for the word choco and hit on enter. Now when I hit enter on my keyboard, it's going to bring me to the search page where the keyword choco in my URL, which is the query parameter, and the keyword is also going to be inserted into my search bar, and my repeater is going to be filtered with every item that contains the keyword choco in them. Now the most important thing that you can note here is that we can actually go ahead and search for bursts. So as you can see, when I'm going to type, it doesn't search because I've changed the logic to say that the search must only be triggered when I hit on the enter key on my keyboard, and that is what I've just done now. And as you can see, that has searched for the item that contains all the keywords on my search bar. Now when I go ahead and click on this reset, you'll notice that this query will be removed, this will be reset, the value will be removed from my search bar, and everything will be returned to default. So when I click on that, everything is returned to default as if no search ever happened. So this is how you actually add a search bar to your Lightbox that you can trigger from any page on your website, and it brings you to a search page where you can search for items, and you can use multiple elements to filter for or search for items from your database. If you have any questions, you can let me know in the comment section, and you can check out my other tutorials on how to search and filter Wix database. I hope this tutorial was fire for you. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the next tutorial.